Please be seated. On July 20th, 1969, at 3:17 in the afternoon, the Apollo 11 lunar module, the Eagle, landed on the moon. 6 hours and 39 minutes later, Commander Neil Armstrong stepped on the lunar surface. At the end of a decade of assassinations, racial tensions, civil rights marches, through a cultural revolution and still entrenched in war, America conquered space. Apollo 11 was the culmination of a national goal set before the American people by President Kennedy in 1961. NASA and the space program roused American pride and briefly fanned the flickering flames of modernity. Perhaps there were no limits to what modern minds could conceive or what the human spirit could achieve. Yet this hubris was tempered by a stark reality. From space, we had a new perspective, a different view of planet Earth. From outer space, the spectacular orb with its distinct land masses, deep blue seas, and swirling clouds is stunning. But it is so small, just a blue marble in the vastness of cosmic reality. Humankind gained a new perspective of this planet, this fragile Earth, our island home. We would never see the world or ourselves the same way again. Perhaps you've had moments when your perspective dramatically changed. Have you ever discussed a really difficult situation or a subject with close friends, and then suddenly you understand it in a whole new way? A light bulb went on as the subject was radically reoriented in your mind. Or maybe you sat through a soul-stirring play or read a remarkable book, and its message gave you a profound new insight into the human condition. There are moments that change our perspective forever, like meeting your soulmate at a party, or the birth of a child. An event, a moment of insight, a change in perspective that leads to a clearer vision. This is what happens to Peter, James, and John in this morning's gospel. Jesus and his disciples are making their way through the countryside of Galilee. Jesus is feeding the crowds, healing the sick, fielding a chronic barrage of Pharisaic challenges, and teaching the multitudes. In the midst of this, Jesus needs some quiet time away to re-energize. So he takes Peter, John, and James for a hike. They trek up the monadnock called Mount Tabor in Lower Galilee. Some 1,800 feet up, they reach the summit. There, a theophany occurs, a manifestation of God. Jesus' friends are swept up in an incredible transcendent moment filled with sensory experience and overwhelming emotion. There is complete awe, an incredible wonder, terrible fear, and profound confusion as Jesus, the teacher from Nazareth, becomes changed before their eyes. Now, whatever metaphysical phenomenon creates this scene, because of it, the disciples see Jesus differently. Their perspective is changed. He is no longer just a compassionate healer and wise teacher. Jesus becomes for them at that moment the incarnate, embodied Son of God. God, who people always thought to be distant and transcendent, has come to earth. The divine is walking among them. And they know, having witnessed Jesus' words and actions, what God is especially concerned about: justice and compassion. Jesus has focused on the suffering of the poor and hungry, the welfare of the marginalized and sick, the plight of women, widows, and children. All of the memories of their time with him come flooding into this mysterious event, and the pieces fit together. Before the mountain, Jesus is wise teacher and miraculous healer. After the mountain, there is no doubt he is heaven on earth. And Peter, James, and John never see the world, Jesus Christ, or themselves the same again. I don't know about you, but I could sure use a fresh perspective these days. I am weary from the visual stream of hateful rhetoric, the images of children separated from their parents at the border, and especially the violence. There are too many reports of shooters, too many images of devastated mourners and candlelight vigils and funerals. As I prepared to depart from a conference in Pittsburgh just on Friday, a woman said to me, "Be careful going to the parking garage. 2 women were randomly stabbed up the street last night." "Good to know," I said. But honestly, I don't want to have to know those kinds of things. And the people of Baltimore shouldn't have to keep count of their dead. Children should go to school to learn critical thinking and the joy of reading, not how to barricade a door or shelter in place. And no one should have to worry about shopping on a Saturday afternoon because of the color of their skin. Are you worn down by the hate? Whatever happened to the magnificent aspirations, the kind that propelled a space program forward, or the collective dream that every child should have excellent education? When did our ambitions become so self-centered and small? I wonder, are we so sin-sick and weary that we've somehow lost our creative imagination? My friends, the cosmic battle between good and evil is timeless. Systems of oppression, what we call the powers and principalities, have weighed down on some people to the benefit of others throughout history. Peter, James, and John saw the poor spit upon, the blind accused, the mentally ill chained and forgotten. They lived the disparity between luxurious wealth and abject poverty. It's why they followed Jesus. They saw in him compassion and the power to bring healing to the broken. They saw in Jesus someone who was so clear about who he was, what his mission was, that he was not afraid. He wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo. He wasn't afraid of those who chose to be violent as a means to their ends. He didn't live his life in fear. Instead, he brought the good news of God's unconditional, lavish love. And he brought hope that through love, the world can be transformed. The light that will pierce these dark days is the light in every one of us. If we stay focused on the core values of justice, mercy, and compassion, if we, as we promise our baptismal covenant, if we respect the dignity of every human being and confront injustice, I believe love will prevail. Together this morning, we will reaffirm our baptismal covenant, and through it, strengthen our resolve to be healers in this broken world. Then, renewed in that commitment, we will baptize Andrew Carl Grussell. Peter and Katie, you will want to protect Drew from every hurt. You can't. So help him develop his resiliency. You may want to shield Drew from the brokenness of this world. Let him see the injustice. Then encourage him to fight hard for justice. As his parents, when the time is right, let Drew's eyes gaze upon poverty, hunger, and disease, and teach him empathy. Foster his tenacity. Keep his eyes focused on what is doing right as he responds to the world around him, not on what is convenient. And fill his mind with stories. Stories of great women and men who faced adversity but forged ahead. Stories of adventurers, inventors, artists, and activists, and the faithful people of old. And remind him every day and every night that Drew is a beloved child of God, and God, just like his mom and dad, will never stop loving him, right up to the moon and back.